From sanctions to silicon, China's semiconductor breakthrough. This could enable China to bridge the technological gap that the US is determined to maintain and position China as a world leader in chip production. A sign of the rise of a self-reliant China that is aiming to assert global dominance in the semiconductor industry came when Huawei surprised the world by unveiling its new 5G-capable smartphone, despite US sanctions on advanced microchip production. China's microchip breakthrough, if confirmed, will propel the country's economy further and establish it as a key chip producer globally. The announcement of Huawei's new Mate 60 Pro, its first 5G-capable smartphone in nearly 3 years, defied the US sanction, imposed in October 2022, that was designed to limit the company's production without Western help. The October 2022 sanctions were reminiscent of the US sanctions imposed on ZTE in 2018, which pushed ZTE to the brink of bankruptcy. According to a 2023 report by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, (CSIS), this was a turning point in China's strategic thinking when it came to the semiconductor industry. The 2018 sanctions highlighted China's technological dependence on the US and its allies, with this being reinforced following the recent wave of sanctions in 2022. The need for technological independence seems to have been years in the making. How sanctions have influenced semiconductors. China has been a long-time and prominent player in the semiconductor industry, with giant companies such as Alibaba, Baidu, and Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation, SMIC. Investment in semiconductors has allowed China to ascertain global leadership in themes like 5G, artificial intelligence, AI, and e-commerce. However, the US announced sanctions that would limit China's access to Western semiconductor technology and curb its development of advanced microchips. The sanctions were expected to pull back China's progress by several years, says Josep Borrell, director of Global Data's Thematic Intelligence. The global chip shortage. The onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 disrupted the semiconductor supply chain, leading to a global chip shortage. The supply chain crumbled under the demand for remote work enabling computer equipment and the increase in interest in 5G and cloud-based services. China was not immune to this, and things got worse in October of 2022 when the US sanctions rolled in. The US sought to cripple China's ability to purchase and produce advanced chips, fearing that the chip-integrated AI systems would welcome a new era of surveillance equipment and weapons. Japan and the Netherlands allied with the US in December 2022, with industry-leading suppliers such as ASML prohibited from selling its most advanced technology to China. The semiconductor export ban posed a risk to the future of the Chinese economy. The China Semiconductor Industry Association, CSIA, opposes the US-led alliance, arguing that the sanctions will harm the domestic and global semiconductor industry. Chinese advanced chip giants such as SMIC and Yangtze Memory Technologies were starting to feel the effects of this. Unisoc, a Chinese firm specializing in mobile chipsets, pivoted to focus on the production of less advanced chips to combat the effects of the sanctions. A light at the end of the tunnel. Huawei's Mate 60 Pro, released in August 2023, utilizes a Kirin 9000 S7 nanometer (nm) microchip, reportedly made by SMIC. This raises several questions. First, whether China broke US sanctions or made a breakthrough in domestic chip production? Second, what level of government subsidies were required to compensate SMIC for manufacturing a 7nm chip using legacy ASML's deep ultraviolet (DUV) lithography systems, which can only achieve prohibitively low yields at that level of miniaturization? In other words, how economically sustainable is the engineering feat achieved by SMIC? While the US investigates how this happened, it may be that the US sanctions served as a catalyst for self-reliance within the Chinese semiconductor industry. If China can successfully produce chips domestically, free from Western help, it could have profound implications for the future of the Chinese economy and the ongoing US-China tech war. China would not only reduce spending on semiconductor imports but speed up the progress of its domestic industries, from automobiles to consumer electronics. With that said, China's microchip is reportedly not as advanced as those produced by the likes of Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, and Samsung Electronics, which produce 3nm and 4nm chips. A breakthrough like this will enable it to bridge the technological gap that the US is determined to maintain, positioning China as a world leader in chip production. China's breakthrough in semiconductor equipment shows US tech blockade is ineffective. The China Optics Valley WeChat account announced on Tuesday that Chinese high-tech enterprise Wuhan Huagong Laser Engineering, a subsidiary of Shenzhen-listed high-tech group, has produced China's first high-end wafer laser cutting equipment with fully localized core components. The high accuracy and key equipment in semiconductor manufacturing, which decides the performance and the cost of the semiconductor chips, is a key technology breakthrough. The Chinese technology company in the field of semiconductor manufacturing equipment against the backdrop of the U.S. continuous escalation of the blockade in semiconductor and other high-tech sectors. This is the latest example. As many experts in Western countries have long warned, the U.S. escalating chip war against China may backfire, pushing China to make progress in domestic manufacturing of advanced semiconductors, while harming technology companies in the U.S. and its allies. Although Washington appears eager to improve relations with Beijing and has sent a string of officials to China recently, the U.S. is currently focused primarily on limiting China's ability to develop or obtain access to more advanced microchips. Although Washington's rationale behind this move is that restricting China's chips will help protect national security and foreign policy interests. In reality, this approach represents blatant technological suppression and containment, the purpose of which is to allow the U.S. to maintain its dominant position in this technological field. The U.S. introduced comprehensive semiconductor export controls to China in October last year. It also wooed allies such as Japan and the Netherlands to jointly launch a semiconductor equipment ban on China. The U.S. attempts to form a near full-fledged blockade of China's ability to buy semiconductors and the equipment needed to make cutting-edge chips. Recently, the U.S. government is reported to be considering restricting Chinese companies' access to American cloud computing services, and the U.S. is also reportedly considering new restrictions on exports of AI chips to China. While the U.S. is investing huge money to increase domestically manufactured advanced chips, it has also continuously upped its coercion and grasp over semiconductor companies in Japan, the Netherlands, and South Korea, in order to exclude China from the supply chain of the global chip industry chain. However, there are increasing signs that the escalating chip war launched the U.S. is becoming increasingly ineffective in stifling the development of China's chip industry. On the contrary, Washington's move is putting some big U.S. companies and other major semiconductor companies in other countries in a difficult position. The U.S. chip war has caused damage to chipmakers that have been making money in the Chinese market. This has caused dissatisfaction among these companies, with a growing number searching for ways to bypass the U.S. semiconductor export restrictions on China. ASML CEO Peter Wennink said in an interview in April that the U.S.-led semiconductor export control measures against China will eventually lead China to successfully developing its own technology. Intel and Nvidia continue to push purpose-built chips for training AI systems in China amid U.S. export restrictions, according to media reports. Some Western experts have long been warning that the U.S. restrictive measures need to be implemented carefully. If more stringent restrictions are further introduced, the purpose of restricting the development of China's chip technology may be counterproductive. The U.S. needs to be careful about enforcing restrictions, or risk harming interests of U.S. companies. The last, but not the least, the breakthrough made by Chinese company Huagong also proves that China's independent research and development path is efficient. While seeking international cooperation in the semiconductor field, China will also keep pursuing its own technological progress. The more the U.S. suppresses, the more it stimulates China's pursuit of technological innovation, which will further sharpen China's technological competitiveness.